A lot of strategy consulting and corporate strategy is focused on strategy development. But what do you actually do once the external consultants leave, once you get a strategy developed? How do you make the strategy become a reality? For this, we need strategy controlling, and here, controlling doesn't mean reporting, it means steering, it means making things happen. And that's completely different from just tracking progress on KPIs and stuff. It's about things like pre-mortem analysis, so you anticipate what could go wrong, how would you notice that things are going wrong, and what would be your countermeasures, to just give an example right now. So let's take a look at the Localia case study, which is a local insurer from Germany with a bit of a special business model. And for this company, I developed a strategy controlling framework, which I will walk you through right now. So let's start with the executive summary. The status quo is that the ambition and strategy 2030 have been developed, and now we are looking for a strategy controlling framework. Here we propose 3 layers: group, cross-initiative, and initiative. And we are going to exemplify this whole thing through a private health insurance expansion example that is a specific initiative. We expect to go live with this whole strategy controlling in about 4 months. So what's the agenda for today? It's pretty much like in the executive summary. So we first start with an overview, which we just did. Then we look into the motivation architecture of the strategy controlling framework that we propose. We split this into overarching governance and the deep dive into an initiative controlling example, the private health insurance. This is here. And then we will look into the next steps. So let's just get started. So Localia has developed their ambition 2030 and their strategy 2030. So usually it's like this. The ambition is quantified in terms of, let's say, overarching KPIs like gross written premium, net income, combined ratio, things like that for an insurance company. And then you usually have some supplementary KPIs like net promoter scores, churn rate, and so on. But that's not really the focus of this video. Thing is, to reach the ambition, you need a strategy. The strategy comprises several fields of action. You typically have something like 5 to 8 or something like that. And for each field of action, you have several initiatives. And initiatives are kind of like small projects that really make things happen and will get you to your ambition. So here, for example, the first one under the field of action scaling differentiation place is private health insurance sales push targeting prospective civil servants. So this will be our deep dive here in this case. And finally, on this slide, we also have the resulting question from the situation, which is the strategy controlling framework. So how do we make this strategy steerable, controllable? So here we get the strategy controlling architecture. As I said, there's those 3 levels: group, cross, initiative, and initiative. I'll set here that on the group level, we are going to have a steer quarter-wise. The cross-initiative knowledge sharing, I will deep dive into that later, how we're going to do this. Let's say we are not having senior management around, because this is about really getting stuff done, and also sometimes admitting that something didn't go wrong and you may not want senior management to know about this. So this is then complemented, of course, by the initiatives. And for the initiatives, we're going to have a look into 3 things: measurement, steering, and governance. To measure how initiatives move forward, we're going to look into KPIs, measurement points, baselines, and targets for those KPIs. To steer the initiatives, we are having a pre-mortem analysis here, which comprises the anticipated risks, early indicators of things going wrong, and respective countermeasures. And finally, governance. So we are going to have a look into operational execution, so who's going to be in charge for what in the respective initiatives, and operational steering, which is more like the working setup, let's say the show fixes, the mini steer crews, who's going to take care of the team, and so on. Last but not least, I'm proposing to use a tool for the strategy controlling, especially to cover the I and the RAS key. So RAS key, that's who's responsible, who's accountable, who's supporting, who's being consulted, and who's being informed. And really, to keep people informed, it's useful to have a tool that's accessible to everyone. Let's not track this in 20 different Excel sheets and then consolidate it, and it's a huge mess. So you may want to consider this solution like Monday.com. Right then, overarching governance. So here, let's take a look at the group level steerco first. We're going to send out pre-reads to make efficient use of senior people's time, so the board of management. You do not want to waste half the steerco to just walk them through the status quo or something like that, right? So Fridays before the steercos, quarter-wise, you're going to send out the Ambition 2030 ramp up. So what's the current status on cross-written premiums and so on. And also for the initiatives, you're going to send out a set of one-pagers. So what's the overall status? What are the quarterly results? What are roadblocks? What are the next steps? And then the steerco search, which is going to take something like 1.5 to 2 hours. Here, you're only going to deep dive into the roadblocks, the risks, the things that go wrong, the things that you need to put back on track. Yeah, so we're going to do this for both the ambition and the initiatives. Here I called it back to green decision blueprints. We're going to have this for kind of both, with focus on the initiatives here. So what does this look like? There's going to be recommendations and options. So usually once you've introduced the problem, you recommend what to do about it. And in case someone cares, you could say, okay, this is actually one of 3 options that we've considered, but that's what we would do. And ideally, people just nod, and then you move on to the next initiative. You could have a discussion on that. And yeah, well, of course, the decision is such, what to do about it. And in case somebody cares, you could also, in the backup, provide a root cause analysis. So why did this initiative turn amber or red? Coming up next, we get the cross-initiative knowledge sharing. So this is a format to share knowledge between the initiatives on an operational level without management and with some informal networking component afterwards. So challenges usually across the initiatives sometimes are the same, but people do not talk, they work in silos, and you want to avoid this, so that's why I'm having this. We're going to start with some success stories first. You do not want to turn this into a what went wrong a meeting. It should also be framed positively, and then we're going to help each other out with outside-in perspectives across the initiatives, specific next steps we're going to align on, and finally, let's have lunch. So this is rather informal. Let's do this every 6 weeks. Alright, so we're already at the private health insurance expansion initiative example. So let's take a look into this deep dive here. So we got 3 strategic initiatives that are detailed a bit further here. The first one of these being the private health insurance new customer acquisition, targeting prospective civil servants beyond Lower Saxony. So Lower Saxony, that's the region where the Localia insurance is from. And they have a regional focus. They are not, well, that much present across Germany or Europe as such. So that's why this is interesting for us here. Historically, they've been very strong in agriculture specialty insurance, and motor insurance is, well, you need to have it because it's an awareness product and an anchoring product. It's not really that anyone is making money with this. But if you don't have it, you use usability and you use it as an anchor for cross-selling. So you will need to look into profitability issues here, but it's not really that you can differentiate with this or something like that. So because of this, let's deep dive into the private health insurance example here. The reason for that being, there's a whole new stream of customers being generated because of a retirement wave that's going on in this part of the public sector in Germany. So this especially focuses on teachers, police officers, and public administration. Switching costs are incredibly high. So usually people that sign up for private health insurance as aspiring public servants early on in their career, and historically they couldn't really even switch. So this was kind of changed 15 years ago, and now it's more or less possible, but it's still disadvantaged economically because you cannot take with you the savings kind of that you build up when you're young, and you do not need that much treatment for when you're older. And this is one of the reasons why you have huge locks in here, and you really need to grab people in the moment of truth and make them become your customers. So let's have a look into this. So we got more than 390,000 prospective civil servants that are addressable through private health insurance as new customers by 2030. And the teacher segment is particularly attractive due to its mix of rather large size and high civil servant appointment rate. So the point here is not everyone who's working in the public sector is being appointed as a civil servant. For police officers, this is very high. For teachers, this is mediocre. And for public administration staff, it's rather low. The thing is, you have a huge body of public administration, a mid-sized teacher segment, and a small police officer segment. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you targeted public administration, because that's the largest segment, you'd have a problem because only a quarter of them are actually being appointed as civil servants. For police officers, it's 95%, so pretty much every police officer is gonna be appointed. But the segment as such is pretty small. And for teachers, it's just the best mix. And the point here is all of these that are actually appointed a civil servant are eligible for private health insurance. So let's look into the teacher civil servant appointment journey and where we have to focus to actually make them become our customers. And that's actually when they are becoming a trainee teacher. So that's after finishing their studies, more or less. They are allowed to teach in school. They're allowed to teach in public schools, and at this point they can sign up for private health insurance, and that's where we need to be present because of this. I'm not gonna go into all the details here, it's just a marketing funnel and several touch points, but here it's just important that at this point we need to be present and sign them up. So on the next slide, because this is about strategy controlling, we also need to look into KPIs and measurement points, of course. And here, for example, for these trainee teachers, we want to be present in those teacher training seminars that they are taking at the beginning of their trainee teacher stage. And we need access to those seminars. I'm going to take a closer look into that in the pre-mortem analysis in the next slide. It's also important that we get a sufficient number of one-on-one consultations out of this funnel and eventually sign them up as new customers. Next, let's talk about steering. So here we get the pre-mortem analysis. So we want to anticipate key failure points along the journey. So we structure this into risks, early indicators, and countermeasures. So here, for example, the teacher training seminars might just not let us in. We should notice this by looking at the acceptance rate and the actual number of events that we joined. And there's some countermeasures that we thought about. So for example, we could try to gain access via labor unions that have institutional access, or we could host events near the seminar, so not at the actual seminar, but in a hotel or co-working space nearby. And next, let's look into the operative execution. So here we get this rescue matrix. Let's do a short definition first. So responsible is the person who's actually doing it. That's the R. A is accountable, so that's the person who's blamed when things go wrong. S is the support, so the one who is helping the R. C is consulted, so that's kind of the person that you need to ask or that you should ask and that may from the sidelines know better what to do, so this can get a bit nasty. And I is a version of the C that's, let's say it's unilateral, it's not bilateral. And here we get this rescue matrix across the activity clusters from the initiative and across several roles. So for example, the head of sales from health insurance, a senior sales rep, a junior sales rep, someone from group marketing, and the strategy controlling role as such. On the next slide, we have kind of the same thing for the operating steering. So who's going to take care of the bi-weekly issue fixes, the 6-weekly initiative steercourse, escalation meeting if need be, and team-to-team, for example. Finally, let's have a look at the next steps. So after approximately 4 months, the strategy controlling should be operational. The specific timeline depends on the existing level of detail of the strategic initiatives, however. So here we have 3 next steps. The first one being the alignment and sign-off of the overall strategy controlling architecture, both at the group level and for the specific initiatives. And this is gonna take about 4 weeks. Then we have step 2, which we are gonna start in parallel with step 1 already, and which is gonna take around 8 weeks, and that's the review and, if necessary, adjustment of the controlling design for each specific strategic initiative. So we need to define how we measure these, how we steer these, and how we are gonna design the governance. And finally, as the third step, after those 8 weeks that we took for steps 1 and 2, we have step 3 for another 8 weeks, which gives us then those 4 months in total, and that's the go live of strategy controlling as such. So we will have first measurements conducted, first operative steering meetings held, and the first group level steer course should be scheduled and sketched out.